Welcome, Ivan,
Thanks so much. Great to see you.
and you as well. I've been looking forward to talking to the legendary Funkboy. We're going to have some fun today. You're quite the guy. My goodness, talk about being versatile. You have a BA in psychology from the Tulane University in New Orleans. I'm headed there soon. You were also a publicist with Epic Records, Sony Music. How did you go from that to working class musician? How did this journey begin?
That was an interesting kind of career transition. Yes, you're right. I have an undergraduate degree, and then I went into the music business, and I was a junior executive, and I had a corporate Amex card, and I seemed to be on that path as a career path for life. And after about 3 years of being in the music business, I realized that the music business is pretty much a marketing company. It had very little to do with creativity and
Mm,
creation of music. Like certainly we were getting to hang out with the rock stars we were promoting, but we weren't involved in any of the creative aspects of making this product. So
mhm.
I kind of took I kind of had a moment of realization, and it was kind of a difficult one because I realized there really wasn't anything else I wanted to do but to try to be an actual performer. And when you come to a realization like that, you kind of realize, like, wow, that's a tough row to hoe, as they say. There's no guarantees of success, and I have nothing else I really wanted to fall back on. There's nothing else I wanted to do, regardless of education or qualifications or anything else. So I was like, I kind of resigned myself. Well, I guess I got to try to make a go of this if I'm going to do that. And then once I came to that realization, I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to go ahead and get myself more um, specifically formally educated in music, because most of my study at that point had been self-study, or with private teachers, or
Gotcha.
that kind of thing. So then I went back as a slightly older person. I was in my mid 20s, after 26, I think. Then I went to the Berklee College of Music and got
Mm,
a formal
that's it. You just
education.
slipped that in there. Berkeley
Yeah.
College.
Well, and then I'll slip in that I managed to graduate from there magna cum laude too. So
Ooh,
like I really tried to dedicate myself to my studies, to give myself the tools that I needed to hopefully then have any success in the business, in a business where no success is ever guaranteed. You then have to have a good deal of hard work and good fortune on your side to go
yeah,
ahead and try
some
to pay
luck
the rent.
there. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. So
Well,
that's what happened. I just kind of took a bizarre leap of faith after I was resigned to resigned to my fate, and somehow, looking back now, 30 years later, it worked out. I don't.
it, absolutely. I talked about your impressive CV
Mm,
in the intro. I would say it has more than worked out. And what I'm particularly impressed by is that I'm a creative as well. So I know how it is when you have those two sides, the corporate and then that
right.
passionate artsy side of you, but that you fully committed to what you wanted to do, whether it was, the corporate side or the music, that you went all in. And a lot of people get stuck because they want to love everything, but
Right.
we got to do some stuff we don't like so much to get to the point where we can do what we really want to do. That's just part of the process. So from there, you've studied, you've got a great background in business and music based on that investment in yourself. How did you go from that to becoming a freelance professional musician? Because you've worked with some of the biggest people in the music business.
Well, after I got my degree from Berkeley, I came back to New York City because that's kind of where I thought, I knew that I always sort of wanted to be musically. A lot of the music that I was sort of interested in was emanating from here. So I had a grand career set of goals. And what I was going to do was I was going to become a famous musician. I was going to play at Madison Square Garden. I was going to play on the Tonight Show and the David Letterman Show and Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
These are my career goals.
The
And
trifecta. Okay.
right, and I can tell you with great confidence, 30 years later, exactly none of those things actually happened, but a bunch of other things happened along the way that sort of kind of made it worthwhile. when I got here, I started typing resumes. I was a temp secretary. I had a temp gig for like 3 years during the day. It was the world's longest temp gig. It was 3 years long, and I was typing resumes for the people that the phone company was laying off. It was this
Oh,
bizarre, weird, good karma job. I was trying to help work in this career resource center of the phone company, believe it or not. And then little by little, step by step, inch by inch, just over time, over that 3-year period, the evening freelance music uh, career became just enough to tip the balance to go ahead and pay the rent and take an additional leap of faith and leave the temp gig. And that was 1995. That was the last time I had a day job, was 1995.
oh, you lucky, lucky man.
I know.
Uh,
That's true. That is true. That is true.
but you worked hard at it, and you even took a job you were overqualified for until you could fully pursue your commitment and your passion, your talent for music. And you call yourself almost famous, but
Hmm.
you performed at Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center. You're in the Blues freaking Hall of Fame.
Right.
You've been music director for Sam and Moore, Sam and Dave for my old schoolers, Martha
Right.
Reeves and the Vandellas. But you've also performed with Sting, The Temptations, Benny King, Rufus, Chaka Khan, Winona Judd, and David Foster. I don't normally tick off a list like that, but most people don't have a list like that. So
I
listen.
kind of, it's funny. I have a joke sort of my resume, which is included in the end of my book, and I will send it out to some people. It's on my website. It's 7 pages long. It's unconscionably long. There's no possible reason people should have that much information. But what happens is I find over and over again, and you just demonstrated this exactly. Like, I'd never know which name on the resume is going to resonate
Mhm,
with somebody. Like, you
mhm.
have a personal relationship to, I'd say, Sam and Dave, for instance, and then people go, "Wow, you play with Sam and Dave," but it's always one that I don't expect. Like, I'll have 7 pages of information, and some people will say, like, "Wow, you play with Buster Poindexter." I'm like, "Yeah, I did. That's the one that turned you on. Great, perfect. Now we can talk about that."
Yeah, yeah, it is funny, and it just tells us that we have some lives well lived when we can make references to people throughout multiple generations, and that's exactly what you've done. Because like my mom would be way Sam and Dave,
Right.
and she listened to music all the time, and I'm not that much older than you. I'm not trying to throw shade, but
No, no, no.
that's
All
my
good.
Sam and Dave and Martha Reeves reference. But then when you get to Chaka Khan and Rufus and Winona Judd, especially David Foster, oh my God, he's a genius. That's when you're getting into my influences, and just all around. I just it's just exciting reading it. I can't imagine what it was like. Do you have any a funny story you can share with us about your life on the road, or with one of these celebrities? I know there's a bunch of them in the book, but is there one you can share with us now?
There's a whole bunch of them, and actually, that you're right. That's the reason I did write the book, because there's so many of them. I did want to correct you on one small point. I didn't ever actually play with the band Rufus. I played with Rufus Thomas, who is
Oh, okay,
the
okay.
world's oldest teenager, the man who did the Funky Chicken down in Memphis, Tennessee. So
Right,
I don't
right.
want to misappropriate my strange celebrity resume.
Hey, my
Let's
my
just say
bad. That's on
no,
me, folks. I
all
stand
good.
corrected, and I'm okay with that.
All good. We opened for Chaka. I was playing with Solomon Burke at the where was this? The Saratoga Jazz Festival in New York. Excuse me. And the act immediately after us was Chaka Khan. So I feel like I've been on the same stage with her,
Close enough.
but I've not actually played in her band yet. I'm available, Chaka, if you're around. If you need me, I'd be happy to come out.
Hello, hello, slide in my DMs.
That's all. That's all. It's all a shameless self promotion that never kind of ends. And a funny story, that show with Solomon Burke, I think we had a 12-piece band. Solomon Burke at that time in his career was, I believe, 425 pounds. He was a formidable gentleman of certain stature. So on his technical rider, he had a throne, a king's throne, to be placed at the front of the stage, and he sat down on the throne and conducted his business from the front of the stage. using just the power of his voice. And we were
Really?
playing for 15,000 people. Excuse me. And he moved, like emotionally moved the entire audience with just the sound of his voice. It was the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen.
Mm.
He also had on his technical writer um, 24 long-stemmed roses with the thorns removed, that he had to have by the throne. So he gave them out one at a time to ladies in the front row in the audience as he was performing. He was a master showman and very sort of like old school, old world R&B. And then at the end of the show, like for the big climax of the night, his big stage move was he stood up, on a high note. He stood up from the throne, and the audience was like, "Wow!" He moved. It was just unbelievable. Like you see performers dancing and sweating for 2 hours. He had one move, and it was as effective as any Britney Spears concert you've ever seen. Amazing,
That
amazing
is
performer.
it, and that's what I always say about singers versus entertainers. I'm a big
Mm-hmm.
Adele fan, for example. I don't think she has a move other than turn into one profile side or the other, but she doesn't need one because
Doesn't need it.
it's so amazing. Now, if you can sing and dance too, kudos to you. But if
Absolutely.
you gotta pick, I'll take a singer over an entertainer any day, and I just can't even imagine someone just sitting on their throne like a sovereign, uh, mesmerizing 15,000 people. That is a gift. That's a form of genius, and whether people recognize it or not, that is not an easy thing. Thanks for sharing that story.
Furthermore, as the band, as the backing band, I think we rehearsed with him one time, the first time we met him, and then never again, because what he did was, and the other thing too, like all of his songs, the only thing you knew about what he was about to sing was that it was in the key of G. He stayed in the same key for the entire evening, and it was never, ever, ever dull. So
Hmm.
what he had a group of songs that were hits for him back in the Atlantic Records days. So I kind of had like a little cheat sheet sort of in front of me, like a 3 or 4 page thing that kind of had. So what he would do, he would just start singing a melody a cappella. And as the backing band, we had to figure out what song he was on. And then we had to catch up because he was already 2 bars into the song. Where they say, "Got to get you into my life." And we're like, okay, all right, right, we're like, figure out what song it was, figure out what the changes were, and catch up. And he
It
did this over and over again, and it was just such an amazing exercise for us to try to listen and try to respond to him live like that. But
and that
then
he would do that with you guys, said he had a lot of confidence in you too and your musical abilities, 'cause that is really some, Southern Black Baptist Church stuff right there. You
it
just that
exactly what it
is
is. He
very much what that is.
never had a set list, never premeditated what was going to happen. Now that you said that, now I can tell you the next story. We're playing with him at Lincoln Center at Avery Fisher Hall. This is
Mhm.
the um, I forget. It was a jazz festival thing. We're in this very prestigious concert venue
Okay.
opening for
I'm
Wilson
with you.
Pickett
Mhm.
and
Wilson Pickett. Wow,
Wilson, the,
okay.
the mighty Wicked Pickett.
Mhm.
So Dr. Burke, as he liked to be referred, as he was doctor of mortuary sciences, Dr. Burke
Are
started
you
singing.
serious?
I'm 100,000% serious. He
Wow,
was a many faceted individual, fascinating human being.
that's
He
crazy.
started singing, in the manner I've just described to you. He would just start singing a melody. So he started singing the Ray Charles classic, Drown in My Own Tears.
Mm.
And I looked at the keyboard player, and the player looked at the guitar player, and the guitar player looked at me, and we realized between the three of us, none of us knew the changes exactly to the song. We are like, uh-oh. We're live on stage being reviewed by the New York Times at Lincoln Center, and we don't know the song that he's now singing. And he realizes within, I don't know, 20 seconds or 10 seconds, like we're not with it. So he sings, a couple of lines of it, then he moves on to something else, and we're back in the fold, and the concert continues on, and we got away with it. Really probably we were only the ones that noticed it. But then as we're leaving the stage at the end of the night, triumphant, standing ovation, he got the whole thing. The great disc jockey and record producer, excuse me, Bob Porter, was the
Mhm.
MC for the evening. So as we're coming off to the wings, Bob Porter looks at me and he says, drowning my own tears. So I was like, "Oh man, you heard that? Did you? You heard it. He
So
heard it. He
so
knew." I was like,
there's a lot of nonverbal kind of back and forth. And I'm not a musician. I'm a creative. I write and speak, but just that you guys, I mean, I kind of see it when I see the biopics and the movies, but you guys just kind of feed off of each other, get to know each other to that degree that he
"Indeed."
knew to just move on. Okay, they're not getting it. He moved on, and it's just like a seamless communication.
We
That's
don't
a
we don't call it eyeballing. We call it earballing. We're listening to each other,
earballing. That's
right?
that I was searching for a word. Thank you. I was like, that's there's gotta be a term for that. And that makes sense. And it is a relationship, just like every other relationship, even if it's just for an hour or two. And that's what's another thing that's so beautiful about music and what you do, and that you've been able to perform with all these different types of musicians. You've also worked for a major record label,
That's right.
and you've been a musician. What is it like to work for a major record label? You alluded to it, but a little bit more of what that life is like.
Well, that's what I did coming out of my college years.
Mhm,
While I was at Tulane, I was also the music director of the campus radio station. There's a station there called WT Tulane Radio,
mhm.
and it was a 1,500-watt station which covered all of greater metro New Orleans. So it had a potential listenership of like 1 million people. Not that we had those kind of numbers, but it had a very wide coverage, and as such, it was a very influential station. So the record companies knew this, and they would promote directly to us and have us, interview their artists when they would come through town, and send us, So my job was to sort of be in contact with the record companies, and make sure that the station had all the latest product and all this kind of thing. So that was kind of my entree into the music business, was doing it from the radio station side. And because I really didn't pick up a bass guitar until I was a senior in high school, I was like 17 years old. So when it was time to make the decision to go to college, I was in no position to say I'm going to be a music major. I didn't have that much experience. I actually started Tulane as a biomedical engineering major first. And after about 2 years of that, majoring actually in college radio, I ended up with a psych degree. So because of the contacts that I'd made through the music directorship, then that's how I was able to parlay that into an assistant job in the publicity department at Epic Records. And then at which you start out, making Xerox copies and making coffee and running errands, whatever you need to do, answering the
But
phone.
back in the days when we worked our way up from the bottom.
That's exactly what happened.
And then
I was
come in all privileged and expecting to have a corner office initially. No shade. I'm just
That's exactly what
things have
happened.
changed.
And then after about a year and a half of being successful, doing that, an office opened up, and it was the manager of West Coast Publicity. I was in New York initially, the manager of West Coast Publicity for Epic, Portrait, and CBS Associated Labels. So I had to move out to Los Angeles midway through my record company career, and that's when I got the business card, the corporate Amex card, and wasn't the corner office, but it was an office with a window and all that kind of nonsense. And I was working for my sort of pride and joy projects from that time were the band Living Color. We were working on their first project, Cult of
Mhm.
Personality, on the Vivid album. I was working with Stanley Clarke, the great jazz bass player, who's been a dear friend of mine ever since.
Oh, George Duke, Stanley Clarke, all of
George,
those guys.
exactly.
Yeah,
Big
yeah,
Big
yeah.
Daddy, we called George Duke Big Daddy. And I was working with and or near, not directly with, but certainly near. I have a platinum plaque on my wall now that was all the gold and platinum records. I'm looking at it right now, from the year 1988. So in no particular order, it was Gloria Estefan, Cheap Trick, Luther Vandross, Michael Jackson, Ozzy Osbourne, the band Europe, Sade, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Weird Al Yankovic, Alexander O'Neill, and REO Speedwagon. So
Wow.
those were the clients that I was dealing with at the label at that time, and it was
I saw some of those during our pre-call. You have a very interesting office, or whatever the room you were in as we were talking. I just looking at the guitars and all the
right.
awards and the gold, platinum records, just amazing. Just being in that environment. And sometimes people, like, I have some degrees and family pictures and art in the room on my office. And sometimes people are like, oh, that's your ego wall. But you know what? For me, it's a hustle wall. It's like,
It
look what
is.
you can do when you try really hard. And frankly, I'm the one in here 10, 12 hours a day. It's
That's
not
right.
like it's not like
That's right.
I'm out on the street like, look at this, look at this. It just reminds me that hard work and effort gets results, and to keep at it, keep at it. Don't get discouraged.
Well,
And
I call the and I remember when I saw the picture of your office as well. I call them my own. I call them the bowling trophies. These are the bowling trophies that are up on the wall. And having a platinum record up that I was presented with 35 years ago, does that mean something now? Like, yes and no. Like, it's part of my origin story, and
Mhm.
it's one of those things when you see it, it looks impressive, and occasionally I'm reminded to look at it and go like, oh yeah, I did that.
I
It was there.
did that. And at
Yeah,
the end of the day, it's by you for you to do what you want to with.
that's
And
right.
I love it. I was very inspired just seeing it, honestly. And I'm glad I had that opportunity.
Yes, good. Thank you.
So you talked about all the sides of it, that you've been on the corporate side, you've,
Hmm.
filed, you've done whatever was necessary. Ultimately, we heard you trifecta, the Tonight Show, Madison Square Garden, and so forth.
None
What
of
wa
that happened, by the way.
None of it happened, but
None
a
of it.
lot of people have lofty goals like that. What
Right.
advice would you give to someone chasing fame and fortune?
Phew, that is so difficult because I'm not sure I've gotten either one, even though I've been a successful, quote unquote, successful working class musician my whole life and paid
Right.
my
Well,
rent
the key
30
was the
years.
chase, though. For someone
Right.
that
The chase.
that's their objective, the chase, rather than producing something excellent, or a service or a commitment or a mission, but
Right.
that's the end goal. Is I just want to be famous.
Right. Yeah. The fame part of it, that's a very tenuous thing. And I've had
Hmm.
sort of like, I've had brushes with fame. Certainly you've seen the photo album. I've stood next to some very famous people for very short periods of time to get a photo. But like for instance, when I was doing the Broadway show Rock of Ages, which was like the '80s rock musical, the band was on stage. We were on stage. We were in costume, in makeup, and flipping our hair around for 2.5 hours. So when we would come out of the stage door, very often there would be people waiting to meet the actors and get their playbills signed and maybe take a picture, that kind of thing. So when you would come out the stage door, people would go like, "Yay, it's the bass player," you know, and then you were known by an audience all the way up until you turned the corner on Seventh Avenue, and so you were famous for half a block. And then as soon as you turned the corner on Seventh Avenue, you were right back into obscurity. Nobody knew who you were. Nobody had seen you, you know, and it was right back to normal everyday life. So, and that to me, fame is tenuous at kind of every level. I mean, even if you look at somebody sort of uber famous, like, I don't know, Justin Bieber or something, I have to understand that, my parents' generation have no idea who he is and they don't care. It's not for them. So like, yeah, he's as famous as you can get, and still not everybody's going to know him. But for me, the key was to give myself the tools that I needed to allow myself to be able to succeed. And for me, that was going back to music school. That's what I needed to do, was sort of plug in the gaps in my education and give myself the possibility of then succeeding. Then once I had that possibility, then I knew it was just going to be a lot of hard work. It's still hard work. I'm still taking jobs that, require a lot of transcription time, a lot of practice time, preparation time. Sometimes it's a lot of driving, like drive from New York City to Buffalo is going to be 6 hours to do a job that's going to pay me $300, which barely pays for the gas and tolls and my time, but
Wow.
it's all part of it. It's all part of the journey, because you never know what leads to what. And all of the gigs that I've told you, Solomon Burke and Sam Moore and all those Martha Reeves, all those gigs came from working with a band here in New Orleans called the Uptown Horns Review. The Uptown Horns, they're the horn section who played on James Brown Living in America, B-52's Love Shack, Cameo Word Up. They're a very famous, well-established horn section.
Mhm.
So I became their bass player through two things. One, I was touring with the Shirelles, and their drummer, Crusher Green, was also the drummer in the Uptown Horns review. And the other thing was I did a $50 blues gig in Manhattan one night with a friend of mine named Timothea Beckerman, the blues siren of New Orleans. She was up here in New York, and the sax player was Crispin Seo, who's the lead alto player in the Uptown Horn. So from a $50 job, and then also from this recommendation I got from the drummer, suddenly I started working with this group, which introduced me to everybody on that list that we just talked about.
Wow.
And there's no way to have anticipated that $50 job was going to lead to everything else. So you just kind of have to take everything, do everything, be prepared and
Right,
show up on time,
and
right?
fortune smiles, and
That's
I
right.
just like too that you're saying that it was your dedication to the craft, not just do anything outrageous, outlandish, or whatever to get attention and be famous, but your dedication to the craft led to you, you know, getting in the company of the right people and networking and just having what is really an amazing life. These names you drop like they're nothing are just people who are legends to me. I've got vinyl in there with
Right.
these folks' pictures on them, which is as close as I'll ever get to them. So I'm just a little bit envious. Don't be upset with me, but I'm a little bit
I'm
envious.
I'm not mad at all. I'm a fan too. That's how I started doing this. I'm a fan of this music. My mom's record collection was Gladys Knight and the Pips and Stevie Wonder and King Floyd and Ike and Tina Turner. Those are the records that I grew up with in the
Mhm,
house.
mhm.
So,
Midnight Train to Georgia.
thank you. Thank you. That's what I grew up with. Gladys was my mom's absolute favorite. So, then dedicating myself to working with these classic soul artists, this is for me a pilgrimage. Yeah, I love it. I can't get enough of it.
Uh,
And the other thing
mhm.
too is sort of like, preparing yourself, what you're talking about, sort of doing things to get attention. That's all well and good. But then once you're given the opportunity, you need to have the goods to back it up.
Be
You need to be
ready.
able to do the job.
Right.
So yeah, a publicity stunt, that's all great. But then they say, okay, come on our stage and play. If you're not really dedicated and ready to do the job, you're not going to get a second call. It'll be a one and done.
And I know exactly. And
Right.
there's some maturity and growth that happens too, personal growth that happens during all that you've been through, all that I've been through, all that so many people who've worked hard and suddenly are almost famous and people
Right.
don't see everything that came before that, which leads me to your memoir.
Right.
What inspired you to write Am I Famous Yet? Memoir of a Working Class Rock Star.
I think the title it describes exactly who I am. I stand next to rock stars occasionally for long enough to take a photo or play a concert. But most of what I do is I lift my own amps, I drive my own car. I work for a living, definitely. What would happen was, if something crazy would happen at a sound check, for instance, between sound check and the show, usually there's a dinner break for the band and crew where we'll sit down and have a little catering, or if somebody's going to order out sandwiches or pizza.
Mhm.
And what would happen was I would be like, that thing that just happened, it reminded me of another thing that just happened on another job that was even stranger or even weirder. And I would start telling these stories to my bandmates and my compatriots and anyone who would listen. And I was told over and over again, like they say, like, you should really write these things down because you've got so many of these road stories at this point. And I was thinking to myself, back in my publicity days for the label, I used to write the artist bios and the liner notes and the press releases and that kind of stuff. So I've always had the writing gene has always been part of what I do. So at this, as I was being encouraged to do this, maybe about 4 years ago, I sat down during a winter, which is kind of my slow season, and I said, "Let me start see if I can assemble enough of these stories to see if it's a book." And I started writing and writing and writing and writing, and a couple of in my spare time, such as it was. And about 3 months in, I'm like, "Yeah, I think it's a book. I think we have a book there." Um, but never quite got it finished until the world shut down, 2 years ago, and suddenly all the live gigs dried up. And we basically sat home for 15 months. It was a very scary time in the music business,
For
and
all of us.
everybody. But what I tried to do during that time was, make lemonade out of the lemons. So I had time to finish the book, get it edited, send it to my aunt as a copy editor for Time Magazine. So she kindly copy edited the whole book. I got it formatted. I got it put up on Amazon. I was able to finish it sort of with the time that I had. All the while, I was also like doing, home recordings via file sharing with all my other musician friends who were similarly displaced and out of work. So they're all happy to play. And so I did about 2 albums worth of material during that time too, which got me signed to a record label for the first time in my life as well. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
Which record label, if I
It's
may ask?
a company called Color Red Music, color-red.com out in Colorado. It's run by Eddie Roberts, who is the leader of the New Master Sounds, which is a British band that kind of like a new British version of the Meters or Booker T and the MGs, kind of like an instrumental funk band. Really interesting, and it's a great platform for these independent musicians, and they have a whole licensing wing. So hopefully one day one of my songs will show up in a TV show or a commercial and might get return on investment.
I hope that for you. And that again, congratulations. That's great news. A lot did happen during that period, but I saw some videos, I think on YouTube, and oh
Right.
man, I didn't jot down. Was it crab walk or crab tree or did I
Crab
get it
walk.
right?
Yeah,
Crab
crab walk.
walk.
That's right.
Love that. Love that. I got to drop that in the show notes.
Oh, thank
You
you.
are hilarious, a talented musician, but also very funny and a great, great storyteller, Ivan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was like that was another thing, during the quarantine, I had all the time in the world to shoot my own little independent video clips to go with these projects. So all that stuff's on YouTube as well.
And people can hear you and get engaged and they can connect with you on YouTube, but where else can people find you, learn more about you? Download his book on Amazon, guys. Am I Famous Yet? Memoir of a Working Class Rock Star. But how can they connect with you online?
The book is available as hardcover, softcover, Kindle edition, as a podcast, as YouTube clips, in any possible format that you consume media. I believe there's a version for you. Links to everything are at my website, funkboy.net, funkboy.net. Not Funky Boy, Funkboy. Everybody, spelling counts in this day and age. But it's got links to Amazon. It's got links to the YouTube stuff. It's got links to all of the recordings, and way, way, way too many pictures of me standing next to famous people, which are highly amusing, I think.
There is no such thing. I happen to love looking at video and photos, and Instagram is leading the social media war right now because of their big focus on photos. So keep posting those, keep doing your videos, and keep making great music. You guys connect with Ivan, follow him online. He is a fun and talented guy, and you just heard a story of perseverance, excellence, and success. And for this moment, for this episode, I thank you, Ivan, the famous funk boy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mo. I really appreciate you taking interest in my work.
And wasn't that a great program? Oh, love that episode. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Learn more about me on my website, drmoanderson.com. That's MOE. You can read book excerpts, watch videos, learn about my services that I offer, and book me for a speaking engagement. I'd love to talk with your group, and I'd love to work with you. So until the next time, review, renew, and renew. Thank you.